Uh,
Yes.
so we continue with our study here in Proverbs chapter 11. We hit verse 13 today. It says, a talebearer reveals secret. A talebearer reveals secret. Just telling us that part of righteousness is to be able to be entrusted with people's secret. You know, the it could be challenging sometimes as a counselor. That's one sacred duty of a counselor because people tell you their deep secret, and sometimes it's kind of exciting that I know this, and you want to say it just to feel special because it's someone's secret, and because you are probably one of the few that know it, there's a temptation to want to be able to say, I'm one of the few that know it. I want to say it out. But it's a trust that people put in you when they tell you their secret, and it's a thing of honor to be able to hold on to that secret and not be dispelling it around. It could be challenging sometimes because it could feel like a thing of pride to be able to say it, but it is a wrong thing to do. It feels good, but it doesn't mean it's good. It's not right, because someone is entrusting you with their secret. Sometimes it could happen between husband and wife. There are some things I know about my wife that probably the whole world doesn't know. There's some things my wife knows about me that probably the whole world doesn't know. Because just because we live together, we know each other's secret, each other's weakness. The whole world sees the strength, oh, man of God, all of that. But your wife sees your humanity, your your weakness, your ordinariness, and sometimes, when someone there's no wisdom, some spouse will tend to want to speak of that in public, especially when they are having quarrels, to belittle, the spouse. But those are some of the things that are almost impossible or difficult to forgive, when you get into those circumstances and one spouse begin to belittle the other by talking about the things everybody doesn't know, just to make your spouse look small because you're angry, you're offended, almost impossible to forgive such sins. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's difficult. It's a sacred thing to be able to hold, someone's secret, a secret, and not get the pleasure of hurting people by saying it out. And the Bible's listing it here, as something that's required of us. And we say that we're Christians, we need to, Bible uses the word a faithful spirit, a trustworthy person, a trusted friend. Those are words that the Bible uses about us, if we can keep, someone's weakness, someone's vulnerability, becomes safe in our hands, and in ancient times, big empires lost battles, seeming strong fortified cities lost, battles just because somebody inside, told the invading force the weakness of that city, the weakness of that place. The popular movie here of what's the name? There's a group that's known for warfare, and it was just one person despised, from that city that just told them the weakness of those people. They were invincible, but they had a small weakness, and it took someone from inside to say that, and it should not be talked about amongst us. If I say I'm a righteous person, I should be able to hold, someone's secret, irrespective of the cost, because yeah, nobody might be able to punish me, but there's a God in heaven that expects better of me. In such circumstances, we might be looking at the gain, we'll get by dispelling such secret. But there's a God in heaven, that won't forget, that won't forgive such. You might not hold it to any other person, but we hold it to God, to be able to keep the secrets that's entrusted in our